Hello, everybody. I'm George Williams from the Next Search Catalog Consortium in Lawrence, Kansas.
I'm Christopher Brannon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network.
And this week, again, we're going to be talking more about validation, specifically about patron validation for setting up the Add Patron form to validate some of the data that you can input into it. The Every Other Thursday videos are sponsored by koha-US. We're part of the education committee at koha-US. And we've been doing these videos every other week for over 2 years now. So this is the beginning of our third year. And I think this is like the third episode, third episode in. And if you want to find all of these previously recorded videos, you can go to koha-us.org and go to Learn, and then go to Video Playlists. And then here we've got the playlists with all of our videos on them from season 1, season 2, season 3, and I guess this will be episode 4.
Yes, this will be 4.
Yeah.
Because we're doing some in advance, so we don't have episode 3 in there.
Yeah, episode 3 will be out
this Thursday.
And then this one will be in the future. So this is like time traveling for us. So it's appropriate that Christopher is in a lunar module. Or is that the International Space Station?
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think
cool.
You're over the Earth, so it's probably not a lunar module.
No, probably not. All right, so this is the entirety of what we use in our libraries for validation, and this is going to vary from library to or from system to system because of what you may or may not want to validate in your systems. And we're not going to go over all of this, but we're just going to go over a few more aspects of validation today. Last time we had talked about just basic validation, the basic components of that. And let me switch over to browser. And we added some components to validate. So of course, one of the things that we had to do was we had to switch our save button so that we could capture the validation. We needed to be able to set up validation so that it would check all the different rules that we have and regexes or registry entries, so that we could see patterns within what's being submitted and find out if there's any irregularities and report on it before it's saved. So we had to stop that usual save button and replace it with another one. And as I mentioned before, we replaced the button because at least in the past, when I've tried to modify the existing save button, it didn't work. We had to actually just go ahead and replace it completely. So I duplicated it and added a few more components to it so that we could easily do the validation before it actually did the save.
Right.
And then we also created a section that defined a function called patron validate. And this is where we do everything that the button is going to check before it saves the form. And so we have a section here that defines a blank message to start out with, and if there are any issues that come up along the way as it does checks, it will add to that message. And then we grab all our variables, and in this case we only went through one. We went through the surname. We only did our example with the surname, and then we define what kind of things that we're going to check. In this case, we were checking for spaces, and then we were checking for standard characters in a name. So we would eliminate any irregular characters that shouldn't be there. And then we did the test. We tested the variable against the regex test that we set up here. And if it doesn't pass, it would add to the message explaining what the problem is. And here's another test. So we test against each of those regexes and put a an appropriate message for each if it fails, and then we display that message. If that message is blank, then we actually go ahead and save the form. But if it isn't blank, then all it does is just display the message.
Right.
So this is the logic right here that decides whether it's displaying a message or saving the form. So this week we're going to talk about addresses and phone numbers and some of the things that we do with our validation in what we do in our consortium and what we require for addresses. One of the things that is commonly done in addresses that kind of foul things up is, we'll either have duplications or we'll have addresses that are put in the wrong places. And we use both address, there's two different address sections that you can fill out. I'm not going to say fields because it's more than just a field, but you have a primary address and a secondary address, and we use the primary address for our the address that we actually mail to, and we use the secondary address as a physical address if that primary address is like a PO box or something. So we refer to our primary address as a mailing address, and we refer to our secondary address as the physical address. And there's things that we look for in that primary address. For example, if that primary address starts with correct characters, we want to make sure that it's starting out either with a number. And if it's not a number, it's starting out with something like PO. Well, actually, no, it doesn't start with PO, but we want to make sure that things in there like PO boxes are in the right places. Actually, let's see here. Does PO box? I'm trying to remember. It's been so long since I've looked at addresses. PO boxes start out with a PO, right? It doesn't start out with a number. So yeah, regular addresses start out with a number. PO box will start out with PO, or we have rural routes that start out with RR, and we have a couple others that we look for. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but we have some rural areas that have some unique circumstances, so we have to look for certain things to start with. If it starts with anything else, then that issues a flag and warning, and it says this doesn't look right. So we look for those kinds of things. And the secondary address, if they're doing a secondary address, it shouldn't start with a PO box or any of those other things. So we're looking for a valid address that starts with a number usually, or in some cases it will be a rural route or whatever. So our primary address can start with PO, secondary won't. So we have different rules for each of those addresses. And then we also look to make sure that the addresses aren't duplicated. There is no reason that we need to have the same address set up twice. And we had a lot of duplication when we migrated from our last system, and this allowed us to do a lot of cleanup. And even on existing accounts where we had stuff migrated, if they tried to edit that account later on, it would catch this stuff. It would say, hey, no, this isn't passing now. So it would trap that, and we would get that cleaned up. So this validation not only works for stuff that's being entered for the first time, validation works for pre-existing information that you are now trying to clean up. It will check the entire form for your rules and make sure that they still pass those rules, which is really nice. So it retroactively allows you to fix some things that were broken before. And for us, we understand that storage space is not infinite, and every little bit counts. And so we make sure that we're not storing those duplicates, because it's one thing to have one account that has a duplicate address, but when you have tens of thousands of accounts that have duplications, that's a lot of storage. So, and we check for duplication on many sections that have secondary fields. We'll check for duplication with mail addresses. We'll check for duplication with phone numbers. We'll check for duplication with email addresses. So we try to reduce that redundancy in there. So we'll start off here by going over to my code. We're going to grab, first of all, we're going to need to grab the variables for the addresses, or we're set up variables for the addresses. So we have to copy those fields into variables. So I'm going to add new variables here. So here's for our mailing address, or that primary address field.
I think main address is the way it is in out of the box koha. I think that's what it's called.
And then the second address field, or B address is what it's called.
I think that's what the field's called. I think on the actual, I guess in koha, in the actual add patron page, the first address is called contact information, and the second address is called alternate address, and then there's a third address called alternate contact.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of places to put addresses. There's plenty of opportunities for duplication.
Absolutely. So I've got those two address fields. We're not going to go into the states and the zip codes and all that. A lot of this is basically checking. When we check the states and the cities, we do a lot of the same things that we did, like with the surname. We check for proper characters and check if things are, if we're adding spaces at the beginning and end of those fields. So a lot of that is just duplication. So we're not going to go into every single field. Those things can be repeated and tweaked accordingly to what you are checking for. You can change those regexes, but these are more specific concepts I wanted to go over with the addresses and phone numbers. So we'll copy those. We've got those variables set up to capture those particular fields. Now we're going to grab our regexes. So I'm going to grab this one for the mailing address. And then we have one for our physical address here. Get the right line here. Okay, and these rules, like I said, they're a bit different. The mailing address is checking to see if it starts with a number or if it starts with PO box. And here's another thing that I look for. It has to be, PO space box. We had so many variations on PO box, and this makes sure that we are consistent in how PO boxes are entered. So it has to be entered this way. We're not looking for variations of PO box. I've had P period, O period, and then box, some capitalized, some not, some with spaces, and we wanted uniformity. So it's
Yep, I've seen
that PO box and a number.
In the United States, it can be POB.
Yep.
P period, O period, B period, PO box, P period, O period, box. I've just seen box.
Yep.
Yeah. Everybody does it a little different.
So that's another way this can be started on this field. And then we can look for the rural routes. And then we have other things that in rural areas or post offices that they can start with. So we make sure that we include those. I'm not going to explain every aspect of this validation, but those are the types of things that we're looking for. The secondary address field that we use does not include the PO box, because if we're using that secondary address field, we are we're only using that if they have had a PO box in the first address, meaning
Right, if they have, if a PO box can't be a physical address in the United States of America. It's not a, you don't live at your PO box.
right.
It can't happen.
And so we need to collect that physical address. In our cases, we're requiring the need for that secondary address because this is how we figure out the taxing area. So
Yeah.
we can put in, we have patron attributes that we've added that signify what taxing area they're with, so that we can do our statistics based off those taxing areas. So we have to have that physical address in order to determine where that taxing area is. So that's why we have that secondary address. And so, yeah, this one's a little shorter because it doesn't have that PO box. It can't have that PO box. So now we've got our tests in there for that. Now we're going to incorporate a section in here to actually test against that regex. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add our validation. So I'll add this section here. Now I'm going to alter this a little bit because we have some things in here that don't apply to this example here. We're testing against a particular category that doesn't require this. So I'm just going to remove that one. So it's only going to check the one.
You dropped a,
Yep.
You're missing a parenthesis.
Oops. Helpful.
There you go.
Right place. Okay, so we're just testing the variable that we stuck that field in the M address variable. We're testing it against the M address reg. So that's what's happening here, and is making sure it doesn't match. And if it doesn't match the pattern, then it's going to add the message that the mail street address is not properly not formatted properly. It begins with PO box, or it begins with number. It has to begin with number, PO box, RR, HC, PSC, or unit in this case. So there's that test. Let me finish formatting that. And then we also test that address against a reg that we've already created in the last episode. The spaces, it's checking for those spaces at the beginning and end of the field to let you know that you've got extra spaces in there. And again, we did this early on, and this was back when I was learning jQuery. I could have gone the route of, just telling it, hey, just strip all the spaces from the beginning and the end. I could have used the trim function.
Like I do.
Like you do. But you know what? I liked to put good habits on our staff. And so, darn it, I'm not going to just, clean it up for them in this case. I'm going to point it out and say, hey, fix this. Get in the habit of doing it right. So in this case, I just left it to where it's testing against those spaces and saying, you need to find this and fix it. So that tests the primary address. So that's all I'm going to do here. I'll save the secondary for a moment. I'm going to save this. And we're going to go in here and edit this account. And if I've done this right, it should work. So I'm going to leave the address as is. We're not using we're not testing against address 2 in this main address. So this is going to be, this isn't going to do anything, but it's just going to check this one field here. So if this field's okay, it'll save. Okay, that works just fine. I'm going to alter that with space, and it's going to complain, and it's going to give me that message. Something, it's telling me how it should start, and it says that there's a space that's been detected. So it's catching both of those. But if I put something like whatever in there, or let's see, maybe I put in the address without the number. It doesn't like that. It has to start with the number. Or maybe it is, I'm gonna just alter that altogether, a PO box. I'll do it the wrong way first. PO box 45. Save that. Nope. Has to start with PO box without periods, spaced properly. So I will make sure I do this right and learn how to enter it in correctly. And there we go. So that works. So all that validation is causing me to enter it in specific ways. So I've got a PO box in there now. Now we're going to add something to check our second address. So let me grab that. What we call the physical address. Oh, let me grab my variable first. Let's see here. Did I get the variable? I think it did. Yes, I got the variable. I've got the regex. I just need to.
Yep, you just need the actual function.
So yeah, let's grab this section. So that section tested the main address. This is going to test the physical address. And again, getting rid of this test here. Keep parenthesis that time. It's going to test for spacing as well on that one. So again, this one is testing, but it excludes PO box. So this second address cannot be a PO box in this case. So we'll save this and we'll go back. I'm going to cancel so it will reload. If I save it. So I don't have a test in this case to test whether or not if it starts with a PO box, there should be something in the second address section, and that would be a good test if you're going to start with a PO box. And I think I have that somewhere else. I may have to go and look for that. But see, here's my alternate address. So I'm going to do a no. I'm going to copy this. That's alternate contact. This is alternate address right here. And I'm just gonna, we don't have a city defined there. Oh, it's not in that part. That's why. It's not a predetermined city.
When I created these patrons for the test system, I just uploaded a batch. I did a batch patron import. Maybe we should do a video about batch patron importing sometime. I don't think we've ever done
That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, so I've created a duplicate address in there, and it says, no, it can't be a PO box. So I have to actually put in a physical address. So let's see here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now that passes. However, I do have the problem of 1, 2, 3. If I put in the same address and both addresses, it will not capture that.
Because you haven't added that test yet.
Correct. So now we need to go back and we're going to add another test. This is going to check for duplicate addresses. So after my physical address test, so basically what this is doing is it's looking at both variables that we've copied those fields in, and it's checking. Let's see here, if it's checking the mail address equals the physical address, the M address and the P address, and it's also checking the mail address. Why is it doing this? It's here. It's checking the M address again. Can't remember why I had it do that. I'm going to pull that out of there because it doesn't make any sense to this example right now. So there's a reason for everything, and the question is whether I can remember those reasons. But this will simply check to see if those are exactly the same, and it will give me the message. If they are, it's going to add the message address cannot be the same. So I will save that. Now, if I edit it and I have the same address in both sections, if I save it, it says it can't be the same. So now I'm going to put my PO box in here. Correct format and save. So now it passes all of those rules. There is one other test that I stuck in here. And I didn't mark. Let's see here.
Is it the check for PO Box
Yes.
1737?
Yes. Okay. So this is checking for a PO box, but it has an exclusion on this. So this is where it tests to say, okay, you've got a PO box in the first section. You have to have a physical address in the second section. So if you're going to have a PO box, you have to have a physical address as well. But there's also an exclusion in here that we added recently. Let me copy this over and I'll explain that. So now we've got one more test. Clean this up a little bit. So that's all good. Okay, so what this is doing is it's checking, but we have an exclusion in this case. We've excluded a specific PO box with a specific zip code. So it's checking the address, and if it equals this specific PO box and it has a zip code, it's not going to do anything. Otherwise, it's going to test to make sure that if that mailing address is a PO box and you don't have anything in the physical address section, it's going to complain about it and say you need that physical address.
Right.
The exclusion on the PO box in our case, this is a protected PO box for confidentiality. There is a registered PO box in our state where if it's used, then it is excluded from a requirement of needing a physical address. We can't ask them for a physical address.
We have something similar here in Kansas. It's the address confidentiality program that, so if maybe you're an abused spouse and you've got a restraining order against your former spouse to prevent them from having any contact with you, it gives you a way to have mail come to you without going to a physical address, for safety.
Yes.
And
so,
I know in Kansas, and I know also in Idaho, because I used to live there, that you're required, if you're a government institution like a library, you cannot ask for their physical address if they're part of that program.
correct. And, this is we just had this last month come up for the first time. And so we had staff doing a workaround. This isn't the validation works, but it's not perfect. They were putting in a dummy address in there for the physical address to fulfill the requirements of the validation. But this will allow us to not require that physical address in this case. So now that I have that in there, saving it still works. Well, does it? Not saving.
It's not even giving you a error message. It's just not working at all.
Yeah, it's not getting to the function for some reason, and that's an indication that something is astray. Oh, I see why. Okay, I'm testing against variables that haven't been defined. That's why.
Oh,
Let's stick those variables in there. So yeah, if you are looking at variables that you haven't defined, that'll break your code. I forgot about that. So
makes sense.
let's go grab those variables real quick. So those are the physical city, state, and zip code that we need. So we'll grab them. Easy enough fix. City, state, and zip code. We'll grab them. We don't have to do any tests, regexes against them. They just need to exist. All right. Now, if we edit it, it should save. There we go. Okay, so that was my problem. Just didn't have defined variables that I was calling. So now, if I have that PO box, before it would just let me save the PO box without a physical address. Now, if I have any empty required fields, in this case, the required fields is the address, the physical address, city, state, and zip code. If any of those are blank, it tells me physical address is required if primary address is a PO box. So this is very specific in that it's making sure that I've used a PO box. Now I have to have a physical address as well. So now it fulfills all those requirements and it'll save. So, all right, before we close up for the day, I wanted to also go over another section that we can test against, which is phone numbers. And so we're going to grab two more variables. This is our primary phone number, which it's looking at just the field called phone. And then we're also testing secondary phone number.
The way they're labeled in the staff interface is primary phone and secondary phone. Yeah.
The field that it's actually ID'd as is phone and phone pro.
Yeah,
very
those
inconsistent, but yeah. So those are the two fields that we're testing against. We call them primary phone and secondary phone in our libraries.
And there's another one in out of the box Koha. There's one called other phone that I think the field name is fax.
Yes.
Which is also confusing. But we have that one completely disabled in our system. It doesn't even show up on the screen. So.
Yeah, these are the only two that we use for the actual patron. And of course, then you've got your contact that you can check as well. We include a contact phone number that isn't the patron. So those are the two fields that we're going to get. Now we're going to get some regexes for those. So we have two regexes. grab those and explain those. So our primary phone is going to allow the numbers, and we do for the United States, our format for our libraries is 3 digits dash 3 digits dash 4 digits. So we don't require the one at the beginning of it or a plus, and we don't allow extensions in the phone numbers. So this is our primary format for our phone number. But at the end of that particular regex, there's an extra or, and it starts with NA. If
Not applicable.
Not applicable. So if we have a patron, and we do get patrons that don't have phones, we have something else that we can stick in there to indicate we've checked and they don't have a phone. So instead of just leaving it blank, because if we just leave it blank, we could have missed that field, and this guarantees that we're checking with the patron to make sure, do you have a phone or don't you?
Right.
So
do you have I mean, you can write the regex so that it'll say like you can add an extension number at the end, or you can add a comment that says for messages only and things like that. Why don't you do that?
So we keep the phone number field pure because we actually have a Twilio phone system that we use that uses the phone number to make calls, and having extra things in that phone field can trip that up. And
right.
So that makes for a problem if we have extra characters in there.
Right.
The other reason that we don't
makes perfect sense.
Yeah. The other reason that we don't have that in there is I use some jQuery for our text message phone number field, which is formatted slightly different. It has no dashes and it has the +1 at the beginning of it, which is the format required for Twilio. I have a link next to that field that allows you to copy that phone number into that SMS field and properly format it. It adds the +1 and removes the hyphens. And so if there's extra stuff in there, it can trip it up as well.
It'll mess that up, yeah.
I could write it to get rid of everything else, but having this, these clean fields makes for simpler code.
Right.
So yeah, that's it. We've never had a problem with needing extensions. So this has worked very well for us. Then our secondary phone is basically the same, except it will not allow the NA. We will let that one be blank. They don't necessarily have to have a secondary phone, but we always check for a primary phone. So they have to do one or the other in the primary phone field, or the phone field, and then the phone pro is optional. So
do you check for duplicates for phones too, or is that?
Yes, we do. So,
awesome.
So we're going to grab our tests here. So our phones are down here. I'll just go ahead and grab all of it at once. So here's where we stick in our actual testing. And so the primary phone is checking that it's the right format, and then that secondary test of, does it have a bunch of spaces before and after it. And then test the secondary phone and whether or not it has spaces after it. Then we check for duplication. So this is checking to see if the primary phone is the same as the secondary phone, and or let's see here, and if the primary phone does not equal NA, and I don't know why I'm testing this again. I don't know why I need this test. Some of this may be left over from earlier variations.
Right.
I'm not sure why I had that in there. I'll just remove that. I don't see I don't see it necessary to test that again because it's being tested up here. But it's checking the primary phone and secondary phone to see if they're the same. And if that primary phone is not equal NA, then it will give this message, phone numbers cannot be the same. So let's save that.
Could you conceivably have a situation where they have NA as their primary phone and then a phone number in the secondary phone?
No, not really. I mean, if they have a secondary phone, it should be in the primary field.
I agree, but I don't see a test for that there.
No, I there are some things I leave to, staff to logically figure out, but if it became a problem, yes, I could make a test to figure that one out. So I've got that set up, and there is a phone number in this field, and this is the proper format, so it should save without problem. So now if I go in here and let's say I put it in a different format, it's going to say no, it has to be entered this way or enter NA. So it doesn't like that.
Is the actual syntax NA, is that does that work with part of your Twilio system? I guess no, it doesn't matter, does it?
No,
the Twilio is going to be a different phone field.
No, Twilio.
Oh, actually, it would do your voice messaging that way.
Yeah, the voice notifications would check this field, but if it's not a valid phone number, it's not going to.
It's not even going to try.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now if I have spaces in there, of course, it's going to complain. If I have anything else in there, it's going to complain other than hey. So I can do that. What tripped it up there? That's interesting.
I think your validation says it can't start with a 1.
Oh, well.
I don't think there are any US area codes that start with a 1 because 1 is reserved for that international code.
Yeah, and that regex is something that I probably gleaned from some.
You probably got it from the Koha wiki. It was probably part of that original code that you based this on.
Yeah, because not all these regexes are written by me. I either the person that actually created the concept for validation might have had that in there, or it might have been a regex that was just floating out there somewhere that I grabbed. So okay, so that works. Now I have a secondary phone right here. Oh, they cannot be the same.
Yeah.
What's the point of putting the same number in there twice? Okay, so let me change that. Perfect. So that works.
As a reminder that what you base this on was written originally by Paul Landers at Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center. It's on the Koha community wiki in the jQuery library. And it was done on version 3.12, 3.12. So that is quite a while ago.
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
And, I think the only modifications that I may have made from the original may have been pointing at either pointing at the save button, because the save button changed over time. So there may be modifications for later versions, and if any of the fields have changed over the time. I don't know that the fields have changed, but I do know that the save button did change. So that early version will not work for current versions of Koha. So if I don't have, if there isn't an updated version in there already with that modification, then I'll make sure that that gets in there by the time these videos come out. But so, you know, that's basically it for addresses and phones. And I think next time when we are on our next episode, we'll probably cover some other irregularities, other unusual things that we validate against, and wrap it up with a third episode. But you know, validation, I love the validation. We've like you've shown with the in the jQuery library, it's been there since, you know, 3x. So we've had that around for a long time. Not everybody incorporates it in their systems, depending on, you know, what they need or what they require. I mean, I like having our data consistent.
And some of the pieces have been added into Koha as it is, like the change in HTML that makes it, when you call an input field email, when you give it that that attribute, then you can't put an invalid email address in there. It has to be the standardized email format. So pieces of this have made their way into Koha outside of the jQuery route.
So yeah, just a reminder to everybody, as always, if you enjoy our videos, I mean, you're checking them out from our website, that's great, but we like feedback about our videos. And so if you have comments, if you found that I made some gross error in what we've shown here today, or if you just want to give us some positive feedback, visit our page on YouTube. It's youtube.com/koha-US, no hyphen in there. And you can find all of our videos, but we have our playlist specifically for our every other Thursday videos. And you can subscribe to just the playlist or the entire channel. You can like our videos, and you can comment on them, and we'd love to get feedback.
Yep, from time to time we do go in there and check the comments, and we try to respond. That being said, I don't think I've checked the comments in a couple of weeks. Maybe I should do that.
It's time. All right, well, it's time for me to turn the gravity off here, so we'll sign out.
All right, we'll see you later.
All right, bye.